rules!
$1 million once, $1 million twice. Fair warning, it is selling at $1 million. So, $1 million.
Welcome. I'm Mark Ford, CEO of James T. Julia Auctioneers. Today, I'm happy to introduce Dolph Goldsmith and Master Sergeant John Keene to speak with you about the Class 3 offerings that we have in our upcoming October 2014 auction. Dolph Goldsmith is a former U.S. Army armorer and weapons instructor and gun expert. He is the author of The Devil's Paintbrush, Sir Hiram Maxim's Gun, and The Grand Old Lady of No Man's Land, The Vickers Machine Gun. Dolph is being interviewed by Master Sergeant John Keene, Julia's Class 3 cataloger. I'll let you get a better feel and an introduction to Dolph in his own words.
I started collecting these about 1970.
Yeah.
I had guns before that, but I was out of the country from about 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Then well, for a period, for 4 years I was here. And I had some guns, but then in 70 I came back and I started collecting these because I've always been interested in it. I've started collecting them in 1970, and I traveled all, and luckily I had a job as a salesman, and I got all over the country, and I could visit anybody heard of a gun, and I'd say, well, boss, I think we need to see if we can drum up some business in that area. And I'd go there and see and go look at the guns.
Now, how did you acquire it? Where did that come from?
I'll tell you the whole story about this gun. This started life as a 1904 brass Max, a U.S. Maxim, and there was a company that got started by a group of investors, not including Maxim or his brother, and they decided they wanted to capitalize on the Maxim name, and they started a company called the Maxim Munitions Corporation. And they were going to float an issue of stock, and they had to have a gun. They said, we're in business, we got a gun. But they didn't have a gun. They had nothing. They were going to start a company, but they had nothing to show. So they got an 04 Maxim somewhere and machined out these brass parts. I mean, these aluminum parts. It's the fusee cover's aluminum too. The handle is aluminum, and this is aluminum. And this gun was apparently exhibited in a boardroom of some stock company, broking company in New York, and this was the new lightweight machine gun. They wanted to get an order from the Russians for $10,000 guns. They got, I believe, an order from the Russians for 10,000 guns. And this came from a fellow up in Washington. He was very proud of it, state of Washington. He was very proud of this gun. And his wife knew that he and I were talking on guns, and he died. Yeah. The wife called me up. He said, look, my husband died, I don't want these guns. And I bought his whole collection. It was, well, not money, he had maybe 5 guns, 08 15s. He had this one. I particularly liked it because it is damaged, which is sort of unique, the water jacket. Right. I had these all in my gun room.
So what year did you get this one, acquire this one?
Probably 19, all of this stuff was acquired mostly in the 1970s. Now the interesting part about this gun, this was in 1910. It should have had a steel jacket at one time. It was battle damaged and it was sent back for repair. And they didn't have a steel jacket, but they had a brass one. They put a brass jacket on.
So an earlier gun.
Could have had a steel jacket.
Right.
See, it's a brass jacket with a steel end cap.
Right.
Usually you see steel jackets with a brass end cap.
I've got one at home.
Yeah. For Russians, that was pretty high number. Now you see the sight?
Yes.
Was replaced by the Germans. The original sight for the Russian ammunition had a much more of a curved trajectory.
Right.
So the rear sight had to be longer. You see from here to here.
Yeah, right.
But the Germans, the 8mm shot flatter, so they needed a German sight to be able to shoot flat. Tell you a story about this Bren. My father had a friend.
Number 1037.
He was a coxswain in the Navy, in the landing craft. and he was assigned to bring British troops ashore on one of the British beaches. And he thought to himself, he went on the beach, and he had to wait to take wounded troops out. So he had to hang around the beach for a while they collected wounded troops, British troops, to take them out.
At Normandy?
Normandy.
Yeah.
And he was walking around on the beach, he saw this gun lying on the ground. So he said, I've got this good friend back in the States whose son loves guns, collects guns. I'll take it back for him as a souvenir. And he took the barrel off, which you could do, and put it in a sea bag, brought it with him, walked off the boat. Navy guys and Coast Guard guys could do that. He was Coast Guardsman. And he brought that gun back for me, and he came up, and I was about 16 or 17, 16 at the time. I got a little souvenir from you from the war. And he opened the sea bag and he hauled this out, put the barrel on it. I almost fainted.